think we're live now. Okay. Well, welcome everyone, both in person and live stream. We were in this solarium once before in September 2019. A lot has happened since then. We're glad to be back. And I'm sorry we can't offer warmer weather, but still it's very pleasant to look out, and you might want to step out with a glass of wine. I'll mention our upcoming events briefly. On May 15th, Scott Carlton will host a program on Hans Neuenfeld, a German director best known to us for his Bayreuth Lohengrin, which some people lovingly call the Rats Lohengrin, in which Scott was a member of the chorus. We'll find out much more about Neuenfeld from his colleagues, who are his instant director, and hopefully Annette Dash, the Elsa, and Jonas Kaufmann, who was Lohengrin in the first year. So stay tuned for that. It will be streamed only because it will include interviews from Europe. And on June 19th, is this sound stable? It seems to be fluctuating. Okay. We'll present a recital by one of our 2021 grantees. Her name is Carolina Pilou. She's singing at the Met next season at the National Opera Center, both live and live stream. You'll receive full information about these events on our website, along with a lot of information about the society. And if you're new to the society, please take advantage of our membership, which is valid now through August 2023. Many of our events are now on our permanent and free WSNY YouTube channel. We have many books also on Wagner, and even some full scores that are available at greatly discounted rates. And so check our catalog. There's a copy at the door. If it's not there, let us know. We may very well have it. Stefan Vinke is well known to all of us, but I want to introduce our host, Fred Cohn, who is a writer and researcher for Opera News. You see his bylines very often. And he was also the editor of Opera America magazine for a number of years. He was the interviewer for Sir Antonio Pappano when he was conducting Meistersinger here last November. At the conclusion of the interview, you are of course invited to join us for a glass of wine or sparkling water, and thank you so much for coming. I'll just mention that Stefan, of course, is well known to all of us since he performs all the heldentenor roles. Most of us have seen him as Aegisth in Elektra at the Met. I've only been 3 times myself. So I turn everything over to Fred and Stefan.
So Stefan, since you are here for Aegisth, let's talk about that. I mean, you've been at the Met before. You did the 2 Siegfrieds in 2019, and Siegfried as a role for which you're internationally famous and sought after, and and you are in fact one of the few people on earth who can do justice to it. But here we're finding you in a very different. In a very different guise, as in the small but crucial character role of Aegisth. Is this fun for you? It's like a party to do this little role.
Well, first of all, hello. First of all, hello to everybody. This is Mike. Oh, maybe that way around. Oh, this doesn't work. Oh, I'll try it this way. So first of all, hello to everyone. And thank you for inviting me, for being here. It's a pleasure to join all of you here. Well, Aegisth, what is it? Let's say I'm on vacation in New York. I'm having a great time, enjoying all the museums and all the parks and everything that the city has to offer. Maybe. So I'm really making the best of this time. As you all know, Aegisth in the opera has something like a 6-minute scene. Here it is extended to something like 9 minutes, as I'm lying on stage to the end of the opera after I'm stabbed into my back. So they made it a big scene to me. But to be honest, it is something like 3 minutes singing time, which is something very, very different to roles like Tristan or Tannhäuser or Siegfried or all that stuff that I'm usually doing. So I learned a new word here since I'm here for rehearsals and for the run of these shows. People were telling me, "Oh, you are the one who is on vacation." And it feels a bit like this, as it's just one scene. Well, this one scene has to be sung, and someone has to do it, and he has to do it as good as possible. There are some high notes that needs to be hit, and I think I can do it. But to be honest, I know it is one of the important roles. It's I wouldn't say it's a leading role, but you need a leading voice for this. And so I know what I have to do, but I would not overestimate my appearance in Elektra.
But it's a very effective role and a very effective scene. So
Well, the scene, of course,
Yes.
is effective. And since we don't see the murder of Clytemnestra, at least the audience gets the benefit of seeing Aegisth to be stabbed.
right. At least in the Chirot production.
Yes, right.
But this is not your first time doing the role. You told me you did it way at the beginning of your career.
I have done it in several productions
Okay.
already before I put it aside,
Right.
just because it's Aegisth.
Mhm.
But first of all, you know, if after this Siegfried I did here 3 years ago, the Met were asking, well, we would love to have you coming back, but everything is cast already except of Aegisth. Would you be willing to come back to sing Aegisth? And I said, well, an appearance at the Met never hurts. Of course I do. So that's why I'm back here. But yes, I started my opera business in Karlsruhe in a beginner's contract from 1994 to 96. I stayed in Karlsruhe, having my nose in this production and that production. As a beginner, it's something like a young artist program here. You get to do small roles. You get to know how the business works, how the experienced singers make their roles, how they make their way through the difficult and bigger roles. So this was quite of an experience, quite of an important time for me. Important time, sorry. And I had a good time there. After that, I went to Krefeld and Mönchengladbach, 2 cities close to Cologne and Düsseldorf, and was 3 years fast there. And this was where they made me sing everything, because the head of the house said, you're a young singer, you have to find out what you can do, and more important, what you shouldn't do. So they made me sing everything, really everything, from Tony and West Side Story, Freddie Ainsford Hill, to Canio and Karloff and Hoffmann, all that stuff. And I was singing everything. On the other hand, everything from St. Matthew's Passion to Verdi Requiem. So everything that said tenor, that said Vinke, was quite an experience. And this was where I first hit the role of Aegisth. In the production we had, my first appearance was the young servant, and then later Aegisth. So they made advantage of having a tenor being able to sing 2 roles. Here in this production, it wouldn't be possible, as the young servant has an appearance in my scene. So here they really need 2, but in a regular production, you can cast this with one tenor. You could.
Okay. All right. Well, so what interests me is, so you're doing these roles, and I have a list of some of them here. The drum major, which you still sing, Trovatore, Hoffmann, the Verdi Requiem. You emerge from all that a heldentenor, which is not, which is a rare beast. It's a rare animal. And how did you get to that place? How did you know that this was your direction?
the fun part of this is that my teacher, when I was at Musikhochschule in Cologne, my first vocal teacher was Arthur Janssen, who was from Canada. And I studied with him for a while, and when we decided I need to go somehow into opera, he said, well, you know, opera is not my thing, so find a different teacher who can tell you about opera. And we decided that I got to ask Edda Moser, and who was a permanent teacher in Cologne. And so I went to Edda Moser asking her, are you willing to accept me as a student? And we did one class, and she said, oh yes, that would interest me. I said, well, yes, then let's go this way together. So I ended up with Edda Moser studying this repertoire, and after this first class we had, to my second class, she brought some copies, and at the end of the class she said, take this home, study this, one day you will be singing this, I bet. And I was going home, I had no idea what I had in my hand, and so went to the piano, finding out something like, Ein Schwert verhieß mir der Vater. I said, okay, I had no idea what this was, but in the end she was right. She had the ears to say very, very early to me as a young singer that this could be the repertoire I'm going to. So she tried to push me this direction and to find the repertoire for me. I needed to sing, to have a development to this direction. And after I left Krefeld and Mönchengladbach, so after 5 years on stage, I found my way to Mannheim and the Nationaltheater Mannheim, National Theater of Mannheim. They gave me a first fest contract which says young heroic tenor. I thought, okay, that's the direction Ms. Moser and I wanted to find and to go. So I accepted this contract, was happy and proud being there in this theater, which is, for example, the theater of Franz Mazzura or Robert Dean Smith has been there, or our conductor now of Elektra, Donald Runnicles, was working in former times as a repetitor in Mannheim, so quite an opera house. What I didn't know was that it is well known as a factory for singers. So they made me sing in my first year in Mannheim. I had my role debut of Erik in Flying Dutchman in September. The season always starts September, end of September. So, and in October I sang my first Siegmund. A week later, in November, I sang my first Lohengrin, followed by my first Eisenstein, the Fledermaus in December, my first Florestan in January, and my first Parsifal in March. In between my first Dream of Gerontius and my first Das Buch mit 7 Siegeln. This was one season in Mannheim. After I survived that, they told me, well, in case you had to cancel the last or the two final productions, we had something in mind to do this, but we wanted to see if you can do it. Well, I was cheap. I had to learn the roles, so for me it was quite an experience, but I was so, I don't know if you have the same expression here, we call it I was blue-eyed.
Okay.
So no idea about the risk I was taking and about the amount of work that was coming to me. But in the end, this was my first season of Mannheim, and after surviving this, I felt somehow prepared to have a life on stage as a heldentenor.
Okay. And on top of just the sheer experience of learning to prepare roles quickly and to deal with a huge burden of work, it sounds like you were also introduced then to a handful of your most important roles, Lohengrin and
within the first year.
yes,
yeah,
there they were. Suddenly,
yeah,
there was
and a few other roles appeared during the next years in Mannheim. It was really a very important time for me.
Now I'm struck. I saw, I think it was from 2018, that I saw somewhere that said you'd sung 100 Siegfrieds, and this was a while ago. I mean, how many times have you sung these roles?
Well, as you know, since I think that was, yeah, in Covent Garden was the 100th performance of Siegfried. And as you know, after this, we had one more year or almost one more season to go before the culture and opera life came to death.
Right.
So it's not many more since then. I count 111 now, having the next upcoming now, thank goodness. But yes, it has been quite a while singing so many performances with
Right.
Siegfried. I started the role in 2006.
I mean, that particular role, I mean, there are tenors who sing Tristan who won't sing Siegfried. So, first of all, I can imagine why you're in high demand to sing it, and why you get hired, because if you do that opera, you need a tenor. But how did you develop the special capabilities? I mean, all these roles are endurance tests, but for that one in particular, what do you have to do in order to master that most difficult of Wagnerian roles?
Well, you have to keep going.
Yeah.
You have to keep going, and once you start going into Siegfried, you really have to know what you're facing and what you're about to do, what is coming up. And so when the Opera of Cologne, when they asked me, can you imagine maybe singing the role of Siegfried? I said, well, we all know what Siegfried is and means, yes, but they said, why don't you prepare a scene or maybe two scenes, and then we meet here in the opera and let's find out how this suits your voice and your type, your character, what this does to you. And so I started with the first act, the third scene, so this forging scene and all the stuff around that. And I started with the final scene, the Brünnhildenfelsen. And when I had prepared these two scenes, I met the people in Cologne, and we had a session on a rehearsal, on a rehearsal stage. That's the word. And had a pianist and the head of the opera and my teacher there. So some people, my agent at that time, and we have been working for some hours of this. And after a few hours, the voice was still good and fresh. And so we decided, okay, this seems to match the voice. Why don't you start and study the rest of that role? And so from that moment, I had something like a year and a half to study this role before I was asked to perform it on stage. And so having a year and a half, that was good. I wouldn't do it faster, and I would not recommend studying this role, which for sure is possible for singers, but studying this in, let's say, 3 months, 4 months could be possible, but I think it needs to sink into your brain, into the body, and into the voice. So taking time for this, I think, is really, really good. And I did the same with Tannhäuser and with Tristan as well. I took a lot of time studying these roles before I first performed them.
But you, from what you've told me, you are, with the exception of this vacation, you're quite a hard worker. I mean, you told me about a situation where you sang 2 Wagner roles and 2 heldentenor roles in one day.
Yes, but that was not the plan.
No.
We never intended this
Okay,
to happen. But I don't know if you remember. Some of you might remember that the Cologne Opera has done a ring cycle in 1 weekend. So they started the ring with Rheingold Saturday at 1 p.m. And the very same Saturday at 6 p.m. they had Valkyrie. and then this crazy Sunday with Siegfried performance at 10, which is even worse than having a matinee here at the Met. So performance starts at 10, and the very same Sunday, Götterdämmerung at 6 p.m. With different casts. I was intended to sing the young Siegfried, so my performance was Sunday morning at 10, which was not nice, but at least around 4 I was sitting in the pizza place together with my wife, having a pizza and a lovely beer to cool the chords a bit, and an incoming call. I said, well, yes, hello. And it was the general manager of the Aachen Opera Company. Aachen is a small city, some of you might know it, around 80 kilometers west from Cologne. And he said, well, Mr. Vinke, I know what you have done this morning, but at 6 o'clock, I have a sold-out performance, Lohengrin, and we just brought our Lohengrin to hospital. I need a tenor who can sing the role of Lohengrin here in 2 hours' time. I said, okay, I stop this beer, and you prepare a soup for me, a hot tea, and this and that and that. And so I was making my way to Aachen, singing Lohengrin on the very same Sunday. I had a Siegfried performance at 10 a.m. The only thing I was asking for, I was afraid of going on stage, because, you know, once you're getting tired in your head, stage is a very, very dangerous environment. So I said, I'm coming to sing, and you make your assistant director to act on stage. That was the deal, but someone had to sing the tunes. Well, and that was me.
Wow. Wow. Well, it just, whether it's at a Moe's or whatever, you have, I mean, I think your stamina is a huge factor of your career. I mean, you need stamina to sing just one of these roles, let alone two in a day.
I was about to say that one is enough per day.
One's enough, yes.
But well, my upcoming engagements after I'm going home from this vacation, the next thing I'm doing is going home on Friday this week, having the weekend off, and next week on Monday we start rehearsals. I have in Leipzig rehearsal Monday morning, Tannhäuser, afternoon Tristan, evening Tannhäuser, the same on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday is a day of break. Saturday I have to sing the performance of Tristan, and Sunday the performance of Tannhäuser.
Oh.
Talking about stamina, yes.
Yes. Okay. Here's a review of The Ring in Bayreuth 2015. Utterly tireless, the reviewer said. And here's Royal Opera and Siegfried. His stamina gave us not only the most thrilling of climaxes to Act 1, but 4 hours or 20-odd years, whatever. The best sung final duet I can remember. So,
thank you. Thanks
notice.
for that.
Yeah. So, because you've sung these roles, and Tristan, with the Wagner roles, again and again, earlier we were chatting about some of your favorite productions and some of your least favorite productions. So, and we actually have photos of some of these. So perhaps we can trot through, for instance, and you did say the Seattle Ring was one of your favorites, Stephen Wadsworth.
I so much loved working with Stephen Wadsworth because he is one of the directors, in my opinion, who is really able.
Could we have the Seattle photo? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
We do.
We do. We do. There we are.
Go. Okay.
Thank you. Stephen Wadsworth, to me, and to my opinion, is one of the directors who is really willing and able to tell a story, not only but the story. He is working along the libretto, and he is willing to tell the story that was intended by the composer or by the writer of the libretto. And I very much appreciate that, and we had the most beautiful, long period, but a wonderful time to prepare this ring in Seattle. And when I was here, coming now for Elektra, it was such a beautiful coincidence that the first time I went out to a restaurant close to the Met, I saw him walking in. Stephen was here just walking in, and that was a really lovely reunion.
Nice.
Yeah, very, very nice. I appreciate that work.
You mentioned you were not as fond of the Bayreuth ring, the Kastorf ring.
Did I say this?
You did say it.
I think I said this.
Don't try to wiggle out of it.
I think I said this many, many times. Because Kastorf just was not interested in telling the story or in finding something like a red line that goes through the production or through the ring cycle. He was just saying like, guys, invent something, do something, bring energy on the stage. And asking, what should we do? I don't care, do something. And you know what? I don't like a director giving me, I don't care, do something, invent something. I am preparing myself with the role that I have to bring on stage. And I have the expectation to a director that he prepares himself and knows what he wants us to do. How to act, what to act. At least having something like, where should I enter? Why should I enter? Why should I have a fight with him or give him a hug or do this or that? But I want input. I want cynical input from a director. And if I don't get this, I find it very, very difficult. Next to this, in that production, we had so many noise on stage, so much things that were just distracting. It was trash, a lot of trash on stage. And I mean, yes, we all know that particularly in Siegfried Act 1, it is easy having trash on stage, but not for the entire ring. I was really not happy with this. On the other hand, I was very happy and lucky in this ring cycle because in the first years we had Kirill Petrenko conducting, and the last 2 years we had Marek Janowski conducting, who was just recently doing Ariadne here. He's not a young man, but he's still so vivid and has so many things to give to all of us. Very, very interesting. And I found it interesting to compare these two conductors, having one like Kirill Petrenko, who is like a mathematics. Everything has to be perfect. He times everything as perfect as it can be. On the other hand, we had Marek Janowski saying something like, we all know the piece. I trust you all are musicians, so let's just make sure on my downbeat we are together, and in between music is happening.
Okay. But he's a great conductor.
Two very different approaches to music.
I assume he didn't fall asleep between the downbeat and...
Oh no, for sure. For sure not, as he is one of the fastest conductors I know. To the next information, well, speaking about tempi and conductors, Marek Janowski, for example, I did Götterdämmerung with him in Bucharest, and he used something like 1:38 for the first act. Not first act, but Vorspiel and first act. 1:38. We did the very same music in my role debut in Venice with Jeffrey Tate, who took 2:13 for the same amount of music. That's quite a difference for the same amount of notes and tunes and words you have to speak and sing, but both were somehow breathtaking. It was fantastic having both of them, really.
So it must be, a continual education for you to work on as familiar as the roles must be, to work on them with the different conductors.
Well, I have sung this repertoire with so many different conductors, and of course I have my own heartbeat, I have my own preferred tempo to all the tunes I have to sing, and each of the conductors has his own heartbeat, which is different to mine. So we have to adjust ourselves, and every conductor, of course, first of all, we try to follow him. If this is not possible, we have to make friendly adjustments so that both sides are happy with the result.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago, and we talked about it earlier, the pandemic and how it affected your plans. You told me, obviously, like pretty much every other singer on earth, you found yourself with a whole, with months, if not over years worth of engagements wiped out in one fell swoop.
Well, actually, this nice coronavirus cost me 92 shows.
Wow.
I lost 92 opera performances or concerts, which was a hell, which really was a hell. And I lost somehow my best 2 years in business so far. It was a disaster. It was a great disaster. And we all are so happy and lucky that finally we get to have work again. We are back in arts, we are back in business, back in making money, back in having an audience, back in what we had before. Although I'm very much sure it will never be the very same that we had before the pandemic started.
How so?
How so? What can I tell? What shouldn't I tell? Let's start with the fact that, for example, opera houses start taking money out of existing contracts. We have our contracts, and now due to pandemic reason, as they say, as they don't have that much support as they had before, or why ever they have their reasons, they start taking out money of these contracts and just reduce the contract with take it or leave it. At least I got the offer, if you are not willing to do it, then return the contract, stay at home, or find something else or different. Which I find kind of odd and not correct, but what can we do? We rely on the opera houses. They rely on us, yes, but I think for most of us, it's the situation, there are more singers applying for work than opera houses looking for singers, even as a heldentenor. Not really as a heldentenor.
Well, I would think you'd be in a special position in that the Siegfrieds and Tristans are not that thick on the ground. It's not like you're casting Susanna and Nelson de Figaro. So I would think you'd have a little leverage.
I loved the Susanna here. I found the production great.
Okay. Was it Susanna Yang Fang?
Yes.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Well, we've gotten off topic, haven't we? But you did tell me about, though, when the pandemic, which was a severe, artistic and financial blow, that some fans kind of came in and compensated a bit for what was going on.
In fact, that's true. There were, and that's kind of funny to me as a German, there were 2 Americans who were supporting us with their private money. One of the opera lovers from here, she decided that, I know you're in a difficult situation. I have just had some good money here, so let me give this to you and support you. There was another one who was planning to go to the ring cycle in Australia. And when this ring cycle was cancelled and the people got their money back, they had already spent for tickets. This other friend from here, overseas, he said, you know what, this money was gone for me, so it will be gone, and I want to give this to you just to support you a bit. And I think this is a very, very particular situation, and then I really want to thank them again here. Yeah.
Very good. But it must be nice also to know that your art is such that you can inspire that kind of devotion, that these people are willing to do that, you know. No, nobody's going to pay me for not writing articles. So
I know this was a very particular situation, and I highly appreciate this.
And something else you just told me came out of the pandemic, which is your own your own festival. And tell us about that.
Well, you know, all the mess about the pandemic started in March 2020, and my agent, she wrote again and again, and she said, well, Stefan, sorry, more bad news, more bad news, more bad news. So slowly, but for sure, everything was cancelled. So we were there a year without anything, a year and a half without having anything, and we knew about this. And I just found out that a colleague who I met here now in New York, she said, when I found out we will be without a job for a year or maybe longer than a year, we decided this is the right time to have a child.
Oh.
Well, it worked out for her. We decided not having more children than we have, but my wife said, you know what, you need to be in training. Why don't we have concerts in our garden here? I said, concerts here. So we came up inventing something like a private open-air festival in our private garden at home in 2020. And it was kind of difficult because the audience that we were placing in the garden, they had to have social distance. Something like 1.50 meters, 1.80 meters was required. And so for every single concert, we had to make up a new Sitzplan. Help me.
Seating plan.
Seating plan, thank you. We had to make up a new seating plan. And there are two people coming, okay, they can sit together, they're coming with one car, place them together here. Then one, okay, a single place there, 3 places there. This was kind of tricky to find this out, but we managed it. And we did several different concerts and then said, okay, so let's finish this on July 25th, which is usually the opening of Bayreuth. And we finished these garden concerts with the first act of the Valkyrie. So we did, and people were coming. And after we had decided, okay, we're doing Valkyrie, and we had published this, there was such a run to our place that we said, okay, we need to do more. And this is when we started setting up our small festival as a Richard Wagner Festspiele im Vinkegarten. So the Richard Wagner Festspiele in our private Vinke garden. That's what it is named. And if you're interested, you can find our first Valkyrie on YouTube, Richard Wagner Festspiele im Vinkegarten, which had within 1 week, we had more than 150,000 clicks because nothing happened at that time. And people wanted to see and hear some things. So I started calling some colleagues. I said, you are free. Of course I'm free. We are all free. Okay, you want to sing Hunding in our place? Yeah, of course. And you want to sing Isolde in our place? Oh yes, I'm coming. I'm trying out Isolde. So there was not a single colleague I was asking to come for very, very little money because we didn't we were not able to pay a lot of money for them, not a regular fee. They got something like a pocket money, but not more. And all of them were willing because they needed the audience, they needed the art, they needed to sing, to keep the voice and brain going. And so we had Valkyrie first act, then we cut down Tannhäuser to a version without chorus and without most of the soloists, just with Tannhäuser, Elisabeth, and Wolfram. That was all. But that's enough to tell the story of Tannhäuser. And genius pianists who were playing for us. And with this, we did our opera festival. And then we did Tristan third act, just the third act, because we were not allowed having an intermission. In an intermission, people come to close together. That was not possible in 2020. In 21, we could sit a little more. We were allowed to have rows of 10 chairs next to each other, and then having 2 meters to the next row. This year, we don't have any restriction, and we're doing this again, opening this year at the last weekend of July with Die Fledermaus, a garden version that I brought together. I hope this will work out pretty well. And then we open the weekend after with a gala concert, just what would you like to sing? Oh yes, I always wanted to sing this and that. How do we invent programs like that? And then I brought down Meistersinger to a garden Fassung, and we will do Siegfried again, what we did in the last year and the first year as well. Siegfried first act, the entire first act, then having a break, and then the final scene with Brünnhilde and Siegfried from Heil dir Sonne, Heil dir Licht. And I mean, we were pretty close to having a Met cast in our garden, because it was myself singing Siegfried, and it was Gerhard Siegel who came over to sing Mime. And you know, with Gerhard and myself on the stage, that's fun. That's just fun for the two of us, and I think usually for the audience as well. And we're doing this again this year, having for sure some fun in the summertime. Not as many concerts as we did last year or the year before, but at least it's the third time in a row, and doing it a third time, it has tradition. In our private garden, which is Hargesheim, a small village of 3,500 people. We are based an hour west from Frankfurt. So if you are in Bayreuth and you're willing to come over to our place, it'll take you something like 4 hours, the trip. Okay. But yeah, either by car or by train. So if you're willing to come over, you're welcome.
You have a website, and you can find people can find the information
The
there.
easiest way is to go on my wife's webpage, which is Sabine Vinke. You will find this. Or if you look for Richard Wagner Festspiele im Vinke-Garten, you will easily find where and when and what.
And we have a couple, just to whet people's appetite, you'll be doing Tristan, I think for your first time in Seattle, right?
For my first time in Seattle, I've only been once to Seattle. Yeah. This was for the Ring Cycle, for that one from Stephen, but I will be back this fall. Right. For the production, which will have 5 performances on the second half of October.
And I think you're doing a small handful, maybe only 2 or 3 of Tannhäusers at Covent Garden.
I think it's 5 or 6.
Oh, okay. This listing is wrong. Okay, 5 or 6.
Well, never count on these listings. Yeah. It's 5 or 6 next year in February in Covent Garden, together with Lise Davidson, who is now doing Chrysothemis in the Elektra production. Lise will be my Elisabeth over there. I think
that will be worth it.
I think that will be worth it. Yeah, yes. Looking forward to that. Before that, we have an upcoming Ring Cycle in Budapest. They have the Wagner Festival again.
Okay.
which is kind of particular because Adam Fischer likes to do the ring cycle in 4 days. And we have this criminal situation that Siegfried and Götterdämmerung will be Saturday and Sunday. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, I've heard about that.
Yes, and
a friend
after
of mine went there.
and after the second run of the ring cycle, we will have a concert performance of Rienzi.
Oh, wow.
Well, which is the next crazy thing coming up. We are doing this Rienzi in June on the 22nd, and I'll have a different Rienzi version, as this is always somehow cut together. I have a different version of that opera the following day in Leipzig.
On the following day.
Yeah.
And a different text. A different edition. Aye.
Different edition, different cuts.
Oh my God.
Well, it's brain jogging.
Yes, yes. Well, we've almost used up our time, and I promised Natalie to open the floor up to, because I know people here have questions for you. I know this gentleman.
What about some photos? Were you going to show other photos?
I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever wants to see photos,
his speech is
Google.
his observations are so colorful. Exactly. But I know this gentleman had a question for you.
Thank you, Fred. In this production by Giraud, it's not Aegisth that does you in, but his companion. Can you shed some light on what the director was thinking in doing it in that way?
I was asking about that when I came to the rehearsals here, and they were telling me and explaining me how the scene should work. And the stage manager who did the rehearsals with us was doing this production from the very, very beginning. So he knew that the first servant of Aegisth was Franz Mazzura. And Franz by that time was already far in his 80s, but he was always an actor on stage. And Franz is one of the most admired singers and colleagues from my perspective on. So Franz invented the idea that maybe Aegisth should keep his fingers clean of blood, and he would do it. So maybe he has killed Clytemnestra as well. But Franz somehow needed something to do, and he needed to have an explanation why he had something to do. So it was not initiated by Giraud, but by Franz Mazzura.
He did it in X?
He did it in X, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Sir?
What's the difference between singing in European opera houses with 2,000 seats to singing in the Met?
When I first came to the Met and I came on stage, I just thought, oh, holy okay, you somehow have to fill this hall. When I came back this time, I somehow had the feeling the house was shrinking. It has lost the fear to be on stage here, and but it was easy now to accept it as a more or less normal opera house. What I found out in the meantime is that it is, for example, much easier singing here in this big hall than, for example, in Chicago. I think the Chicago Opera House has a much more difficult acoustic. This house has so much more better spots on stage where you can be and how to sing to the hall. We have to learn that we don't sing out straight, but always somehow in an angle so that the sound goes through the entire house. And you have to do the very same in the bigger European houses. I mean, a big European house has something like 2,500 seats, or maybe 2,800. This is more than 1,000 seats more. It is, of course, the biggest. And yes, first time I was scared, but you get used to it. And the singing is the very same.
I'll also observe the Met. I mean, you mentioned Ying Fang before. You can have a small voice, but if you know how to project, then that's perfectly fine. It's not a problem.
Yeah, and singing is not about having a big voice or a small voice, but it is about having the spin and the squillo in the
Right.
voice. This is important, and this has to be on any vocal type.
Okay. Sir.
I was struck by the fact that Thoreau uses a variety of psychologically distancing devices. For example, instead of opening with the Agamemnon motive, you have one of the servants, not Elektra herself, sweeping the, the, the steps of the courtyard, and all you hear is bristle of the broom for over 2 minutes before the music starts arbitrarily. Secondly, he has the supertitles projected on the back wall. They're far too small to be readable, and every seat in the Met has Met titles at the seat itself. Third, she is supposed to dance herself to death and then fall lifeless. Instead, she simply sits there in a catatonic state, unmoving. I noticed an interesting thing about the orchestration, that Runicles, at the very climax of the end of the opera, added in an organ pedal, which gives even more power to like the bass drum, and then there's this throbbing bass. I listened to professional monitoring headphones.
Is there a question?
And I
Question?
really heard the difference.
Fred,
So the question is, what are your thoughts on Thoreau's departures from tradition and his distancing devices?
Well, first of all, there are several points you were just speaking about. Let me catch up, maybe, for example, the very first one and the very last one. The very first one is that I think it's a pretty smart idea, showing the audience that someone is cleaning whatever he or she is cleaning up. I think we find this very often, that at the beginning of Elektra, someone is cleaning something, or himself, or his or her hands, because a murder has happened. Agamemnon has been killed. And this blood, this blood of Agamemnon somehow is stuck in the house or to the people, and someone is cleaning up after what happened before this story can take part. I think that's the way I'm reading this very beginning.
I think some of the peculiarities of like the subtitles, the title, the projected titles, I think that comes from X, where they don't have C titles. So I think it was just carried over, and it's also a smaller space.
But even here, I love having the supertitles somewhere on stage, because you keep your eyes on stage, and once you want to know what are they saying, you are not going down and up and down and up again, but you keep having your eyes on stage, and while you're reading with the other eyes or just with the eye side, you follow what is happening on stage. I find it very smart, and if I were head of a house, I would ask the set designers to always find a way for making this happen.
Any other questions? Sir.
I've noticed over the decades that the acting, the level of acting, realistic acting among singers in general, is vastly improved. And I'd like to know, in your training and your experience, Mr. Vinke, if you have focused on that, actual acting classes, and what do singers generally, how do they regard the acting, and why has it improved so much in your view?
Well, I think we live in different times now compared to the well, to 50, 60, 70 years ago, where an opera singer was coming on stage, standing, singing, dying, or leaving. We find ourselves today as Sänger-Darsteller, singing actors. And we are trained in that way from the very first year in college. We start this education of having class in how to act, how to move, how to dance, how to fight. It is an important part of the training we observe.
Because the personal connection is it's always there these days, and you know that plus scale then obviously.
Yeah, of course. First of all, we are musicians. But if I enter a stage, a scenic stage like this is, I am an actor. But don't get me wrong, I think what we are doing is music theater. So in my opinion, music first, theater second. I know many people will crucify me for this, but that's my opinion. Music first, and opera is first of all about voice. And you can quote me with this where and whenever you want. Music first, scene second.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now. I'm tempted, since I just found out you played Freddie Eynsford Hill, to ask you to sing On the Street Where You Live, but I will not. I will just instead thank you so much and for making this so lively and interesting. And
Just may I interrupt you?
Sure.
111 Siegfrieds now, but it was 82 shows of Tony, of West Side Story. So
That's
I
way up there.
had pretty much of that.
Oh, so you'll sing as Something's Coming.
Who knows?
In honor of your upcoming Tannhäuser, I would like to present you with this token of our appreciation, Tannhäuser medallion,
Oh, thank
made
you very
in Germany.
Thank you very much for this. Wow. Thank you. This would.
Please join us for a glass of wine. And if you're brave, you can go out on the terrace.
That was easy. Wow, I like that.
Nice.
Isn't that pretty?
That is pretty. Thanks for